Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast, where we hear the stories of information security professionals. This podcast explores different angles, out-of-the-box ideas, and the human element of cybersecurity. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcast and supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP so we can continue to bring on amazing guests. You can watch videos of the interviews at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.
And welcome back to the first season of the Cybersecurity Cloud Podcast, formerly known as Cyber Mentoring Monday. We're back today with Chris Hodson, CISO of Tanium, that he grew through the ranks, and he's going to talk us through what it is to become a CISO and where did he start. I hope you enjoy.
I wanted to talk about how to talk to a CISO, what's the role of a CISO in an organization like Tanium, and how to become a CISO. So for you, Chris, share a little bit of your part, and then we open up the forum to question and discussion.
Sounds good.
And good. So why don't you start introducing yourself?
Yeah, that's probably a good place to start, right? So, yeah, I'm Chris Hodson. I've been in this industry for, what I say now, about 17, 18 years in various different roles. So I spent, I suppose the majority, if you take it in years anyway, the majority of my time in end user world, as someone who now works for a vendor, it's just colloquially referred to as end user world, right? So there are a lot of time in financial services. I worked for Lloyds Bank as a consultant, the same at Deutsche, various other kind of short-term kind of contracting and consultancy gigs. What else have I worked in? Retail. I used to be the head of security over at Waitrose and did some work sort of short term at places like Tesco as well. And I've worked in various different industries, but also in different roles, right? So I think you could kind of delineate CISOs into, I mean, just in your view on this as well, actually, Francesco, into kind of two buckets really, or two kind of paths to where they are. You've got what I see as the business leader. I think that's still as valid today as it has been. So the guy or the lady who's been in an organization for a period of time, an extensive period of time as an executive. They may have worked in finance. They may have worked in HR. They may have worked in kind of areas of the core business. They have such a, I suppose, holistic understanding of the business that moving them into a security role sort of suits their background and suits their experience in the company, because they know who to speak to, when to speak to them, and they probably understand business risk and how risk is evaluated in a company, right? Now, that's not the route that I took. That's the opposite route. So mine was a very technical route. So I started many moons ago, actually, with an idea of maybe being a software developer. So I remember being at college and working with kind of VB5, VB6, a lot of scripting languages, thinking maybe that's the kind of direction that I take. And, I still stay to this day, reasonably technical. I still like to keep my hand in with kind of contemporary technologies and various kind of development opportunities. But I really wanted to kind of extend a curiosity or an enthusiasm from my childhood of understanding how things work and then understanding how you break them, right? Generally speaking. And that lends itself very well to a security role. So, a lot of time passed and I went through a fairly kind of, I suppose it's traditional technical track that you see a lot of people go down of, Microsoft being the prevalent or pervasive kind of operating system organization that they were in kind of mid-90s through to, the mid-noughties. The mid-noughties, I would say, probably extending it from there as well, of being the only platform other than server OSs with the kind of Unix world that you saw. So did my MCSE. You got to that crossroads of which electives do you do? Do you do database? Do you do messaging? Do you do security? Sadly, I think I did all three.
Or networking.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's a branch I took. Exactly the same path I did.
But that's it, right? You get to a point where you kind of force down this route of, you think, it's only one or two more exams. So I did the security one, and it was I wouldn't say before that point that I had this view that being a CISO or working even in security was kind of the ultimate objective, but it just made sense, right? When I started to look at, I suppose, the requirements of a role down that route, rather than development, rather than messaging, rather than database analysis. I mean, no disrespect to any of those guys. I know some brilliant DBAs, some brilliant guys who work with email, but in security, you're getting much more of a comprehensive, I suppose, a requirement, I should say, rather, to have a comprehensive understanding and appraisal of an environment, rather than, I don't want to call it a parochial view, but a specific view of an environment. So I spent a lot of time doing my studies, as most people did, and then just got a foot in the door with some contracts. So like I said, I spent a lot of time at Lloyd's Bank. I'll be honest, when I first joined Lloyd's, I think I was woefully underqualified to be a security architect, and that's something that I wrote in the kind of preface to my book recently. Was, thanks to everyone who put up with me asking lots of questions on the job, but that's really where you gain your experience, isn't it? That's where you identify your areas that you need to focus on for improvement. It's where you identify your kind of passion and your enthusiasm. I think
I think on that point, to jump on,
no,
I think I did more or less the same thing. So I changed role, and I think by putting yourself in a role that you're not comfortable in, you actually, that push you to learn, and maybe people has to put up with you. But as a security, I think we have the leisure, if you want, that you can't know everything. So they kind of expect you to be, I don't know, to quote Stu, the imposter syndrome. So they kind of expect you to not be the guy that knows a little bit of everything or everything in detail. So but on that point, I think it's very important that you keep on putting yourself in roles that you're not comfortable with. So you kind of grow the skills and then you move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think if you go for a role that you can do, I think there's a shelf life on that role, isn't there? Both for you and for potentially the organisation in their understanding of where to put you in that company. So I agree. I think as an industry, I think we're quite poor at this. I think as an industry, we try and sort of pigeonhole people. I call it in my book this reverse funnel, right? So if you're a doctor or you're in the medical profession, you go through this fairly kind of linear way of progressing through your career, right? So you go to university, you decide you're going to work in the medical profession, you have placements as essentially an intern, you then work as a GP for many years, and then after being a GP, you decide you're going to specialize. So, you might want to work in a plethora of different roles within the medical profession. You might want to work in neurology. You might want to work as someone who's working with sports performance and physio. Whatever it is, you decide you specialize on an area. In cyber and information security, I know what your views are on the call, but I feel we do the opposite. We expect somebody when they come out of kind of education, whatever that level of education is, we expect them to understand what they want to do. They're immediately immersed into the world of cyber, and it's right. You're either going to work in DevOps, or you're going to be a cryptologist, or you're going to be a pen tester, or you're going to be an architect. How possibly are people at a young age?
They're all new roles. Honestly, I started calling myself an architect 10 years ago when the concept was not there, and I started forming it and started to justify my role, and now it's a mainstream. DevOps and DevSecOps is the same, or it's like machine learning is the old is the old beauty. I had people just talking to me, how do you see machine learning in security? It's like machine learning has been in security. Take a Bayesian network to detect spam. It's been there since 15 or 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's always been there. So I think there is a little bit of inventive, but people start somewhere. I guess in our field, it just when they are.
Oh, I've lost you, Francesco. I don't know if that's me or you. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, you're back. You're in the room. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm just on mobile. That's It's kicking up fast, I guess.
It's doing very well. No, well done.
Yeah, no, my mobile is holding on strong. Well done, mobile. But I'm saying, I think you just start somewhere. You start solving a problem and just building up. I don't know if you will start on the infrastructure. I started on the infrastructure, for example, and then moved into software. You probably took another path. But it doesn't matter ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, maybe more from the application side of things. But I think we use the phrase in kind of agile and sprint-based methodologies of talking about failing fast. Well, I think we need to have the opportunity to do that in our industry as well, right? So, I don't see enough kind of cyber apprenticeship programs, right? Where, you're going to spend 3 months in an organization working in incident response, and you'll spend 3 months working in architecture, and you'll spend 3 months working in, various different areas, be those aligned to specific domains or be those kind of cross-functional. And I don't know, maybe the end user world's changed since I was there, coming up to 4 years ago. But from my kind of IISP engagements, from various discussions, I don't see that it is, right? I see that people are expected to know very early on in their career which kind of branch of cyber that they want to go into, and I don't always think that that's best, if I'm brutally honest.
I don't agree with that as well, because when I first started, I tried all these things.
Okay.
From a technical background, and I had to cross-train myself to do cybersecurity. So I tried hacking, forensics, and then GRC stuff. And I realized, well, I don't have time to run a business plus keep up with all the hacking technologies and everything, because I got a really bad memory. I can't remember all these commands sometimes. And I had to then move on to leadership and GRC stuff. So, where you go and advise the C-level, and then more into doing sort of like virtual CISO kind of advice and ISO audits and things like that. That's purely because, I initially thought, these are boring. I don't want to do that kind of stuff. I want to get into pen testing. But then I realized, no, it's not for me. And I had to change direction and do something different. So I spend most of my time doing audits and gap assessments and things like that, and also talking to C-level people. I never thought I'd like it. I love it. So it's how you find yourself doing and enjoying what you do.
But how much of that was your own, without putting words in your mouth, how much of that was your own, I suppose, determination and proactivity, as opposed to there being an opportunity within a specific organization for, I don't know, applying? Actually, I'll go back a step. I think that if we're going to better protect organizations, the people who work in architecture need at least a rudimentary understanding of how the SOC function works. And those in the SOC function need to understand how AppSec works, and those in AppSec, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I suppose my point, if I articulate myself a little bit better, is I don't see enough of that. I don't see enough of that.
I actually have another point that we were discussing on the panel today, that they said every company is a data company, is like an engineering company. Everybody needs to be an engineer, even architect. I've seen a lot of architects that said, or a lot of CISO, back to your point, that says, I'm a CISO, I'm not interested in the technical stuff. It's bloody wrong.
You're recording this call. I won't give my view on that. But I think you're right.
I can edit it afterwards, so I can pause it.
I think. Go on. Sorry, Chris.
No. I was just going to kind of support what Francesco was saying there. In fact, I think I was with I'm doing some personal training at the moment. I think it was my personal trainer I said this to. I said, it's strange that there is this view that you can be, and I'm doing kind of quotation marks here, you can be a non-technical, and you can interpret non-technical in any way you want, CISO. You don't have, and I don't want to be, I'm not sure, maybe I do want to be quoted on this, I'm not sure, but you don't have somebody who's, a driving instructor who says they don't know how to reverse, do you? To me, it's kind of like that, right? We're in a fundamentally technical discipline. Now, there are obviously very kind of important intrinsic components around psychology and around behavior. Of course there are, that because
we're more people. It's more stakeholders.
We are, but ultimately, at its crudest, most fundamental level, we are ones and zeros. It's a digital discipline that we're working in. So I don't expect all CISOs to understand the specifics and the nuances of how AES works, but I expect potentially to understand strengths and weaknesses of particular crypto algorithms. I think that is a fair baseline. I have this discussion argument with many people who disagree with me, but that's kind of my view, is that you have to have, firstly, a passion for what we're doing, because I think someone on the call mentioned it earlier. Everything changes so quickly, but yeah, I think you have to have a baseline level of technical knowledge. I don't know. What's everyone else think?
Yeah, I think I agree completely, because if you don't have that technical knowledge, at least the basics, then you could be fooled into things. I've had where people come and tell me things, and I know that's not right, because you know, when you're going through that technical side experience, where you start everything from scratch to understanding how things are designed and built, then you know, okay, this doesn't make sense if someone says something that you don't agree with. So you have that knowledge to understand things. Otherwise, if you just come from only one platform or one background, say, for example, risk, yes, you will understand risk better, but you need to also have to understand, like you said, technical things, at least the basics. So I completely agree with that.
Let me be the devil advocate in here, and let me say I disagree by principle, just to spark the discussion. But I can actually provide, jokes aside, I can actually provide an example where I've seen somebody really, really technical not being able to disconnect from the technical side and not carrying on the business. It was somebody really into risk and control, but from a technical perspective, and getting so close to the technology that they understand that the business was fine with a specific risk.
I know I can count, and obviously I'm not going to name them. I know lots of people who kind of fit that mold. Like
it's a risk. It's a risk.
It is a risk, but they're not mutually exclusive, are they? Like
no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I think being open-minded and being able to recognize when you get sucked into more technical or less technical, it's just being nimble. I think the key ability, and you can quote me on this, on a CISO, is being nimble between the stakeholder engagement, the high-level engagements, and the technical side, and being able to go and dip in a little bit more technical, or actually admit failure and say, I don't know this stuff, I'll hire an expert, or I'll get somebody view on it. And it's like, it's absolutely fine. And some people, I've seen CISO terrified of actually saying, I don't know this stuff. It's absolutely fine.
No, I
people that pretend.
Hey, Francesco here. A very quick message from our sponsor, and then we return back.
This podcast is brought to you by the generosity of NSC42 Ltd, your cybersecurity partner. Cybersecurity is complex and different for every organization, and you need the best tailored service to make sure your customers' data is safe and sound, so you can focus on what's important, focusing on your clients and bringing the best and safest experience. NSC42 Ltd can help you during your cloud transformation, cybersecurity assessment for your compliance checklist on-premise and on the cloud. Want to know more? Visit www.nsc42.co.uk to get your free quote.
I agree with you on that. I didn't mean by saying risk people aren't, they're not better. But what I meant was, yes, security is all about risk. If you don't talk risk, and if you're a security professional, then I can't take someone seriously, because it's all about managing your risk. What I meant was it is advantageous to have some kind of technical knowledge, or gain that technical skill set, or refer to someone before making those decisions. Because, if you don't, we deal with a lot of technology these days, and it is quite advanced, and sometimes we don't have all the skills to understand how things work. And it is good to know how at least some sort of technical, how things work, so that you can make better decisions or informed decisions. I think that's what I mean.
Hello. Can I just say something really quickly here?
It was actually about to ask Shireen and Rebecca to jump in and give their 5 cents and say what they're interested in.
100%. So just to kind of add to that point that Christopher was saying. So I've worked in the IT industry for 11 years and I worked in security for 3 years. But my role in security was I was hired through a former colleague who then worked for an information security consultancy to work as a PCI DSS QSA and consultant.
Yep.
So I did that for 3 years. And that was my introduction to the security world. And I actually found during that process that I wanted to move from PCI DSS compliance to a more technical part of security. However, I felt pigeonholed. I really, really struggled with trying to move from, I've struggled 100%. I have got a new job though, so I have to tell you about that afterwards, Francesco. I've got a job starting next.
Yay!
Next
well
month.
done.
But it is, and just further to add, because Christopher, you mentioned about lack of sort of initiatives within the industry to sort of help people. Like there's nothing really to train people in different areas of security unless maybe a company kind of takes it upon themselves to do that. So what I'm doing is I'm working with an organization. They found me and they're working with an investment bank as like a return to work program. So it's almost because I had a career break. So I didn't mention. So I worked in PCI DSS as a QSA for 3 years. And then I took a career break after I got married. And then it was then that I only wanted to sort of return to work like recently. So from November, December, and I think I got in contact with Francesco only like 2 months ago. I think Francesco it hasn't been that long, has it?
No.
So that it's essentially this return to work program through a career break, and they actually it just so happens they want somebody, the director of the technology area wanted somebody because to work across lots of different areas across IT security. So there will be the risk side, there will be the compliance. Maybe I don't think there'll be compliance side. No, that's handled separately. There will be a bit of pen testing. So because I haven't decided exactly what I want to do within the IT security side, she actually wants somebody who's going to work. She's got like a team of 10 in that team, and she wants somebody who will kind of just try and work across all those areas. And she said to me during my interview that she struggled to find somebody at that level who wasn't like a complete beginner and who wasn't completely, an expert, but somewhere in the middle. She said everybody tends to have specialized, and for me, it's been my whole career, my whole journey's been trying to find that area that I want to work in, and it's been a long process. So so there's hope. So the industry is starting to do it, but I have to say, because I was in Singapore for Black Hat Asia, and I met I met a lot of women there from Australia, and I met one lady who completely not technical at all, but through going to meetups, through engaging with the community, through listening to what people were saying, taking a proactive approach to learning things, she was able to actually get a job in a pretty technical role. But it's because that role obviously has training as well, so she's able to upskill, but she doesn't have like probably all of us have computer science degrees, but she doesn't. So there's hope from that perspective as well. But the general feeling that I've got from people who I've met who are either trying to get into security from technology or from different areas is it's very difficult. It's difficult to, and we discussed that in
break the wall
sort of meeting with issues with CVs and things like that, and it seems to be the face-to-face approach seems to work best.
I think networking works best, but I think you nail one point that I've seen in the industry, and Chris, like your view on it as well, that we say there is a massive skill shortage, but as you say, Chris, there is not the will or not that much effort in actually getting people in security. And for this specific reason, I do a lot of non-security events when I talk about security. I say you can be a security expert, just come along the journey. That's why I pledge myself not to do 1 or 2 or 3 maximum security conference per year, but the majority of it is actually cross-industry event and say.
Yeah. Have you gone again?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah. So it was just it's like a 5-second pause. That was all.
No, go on.
Yeah. I mean, are we not our own worst enemies on that one though? I think if you think about, and I can only speak from personal experience, I think for a long time, the security function was, not even figuratively, I mean quite literally, behind locked doors, weren't we? Like you'd go into an organization and the security function would, and I don't just mean the SOC, in some organizations, I mean like the entire security function would be behind like a keypadded door, or you'd need special entry requirements. And I think because of that, it kind of, I suppose, peddled or exacerbated this view that it's a dark art, right? That, everything from long lines of bash scripts running on a screen in the Matrix through to, I suppose parodies and memes on things like South Park, is that what we do is incredibly complicated and technical.
And remember the speed, the faster you type on the keyboard, the more hacker you are.
Yeah, this is it, right? Yeah, so everyone
actually, just as a joke, and then I can leave you back. I found a question on Quora on saying, how can I become a hacker? And the answer was by writing really, really fast or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunately true in some cases, isn't it? And I think that has been a challenge. And again, it's something else I wrote recently around the skill shortage. Like I try and stay up the debate as much as I can, because I think there are various different views on it. But and one of them that doesn't add up to me is that, cyber salaries, and again, anyone who's done any kind of statistical analysis knows that you can skew figures to suit an article, but are generally perceived to be growing at a higher rate than other salaries in kind of quote unquote technical roles. So
not if you're in UK. In US, it's just a massive gap.
Yeah. I think as global, again, being a catch-all for quite literally everyone, I think the view or the point that I was trying to make there is why, when the salaries are there for cybersecurity, why potentially are people not taking those roles? And is it the fault of, and I think the answer to this is everyone, but is it HR agencies and recruiters just having wish list specs? Is it a kind of reluctance or reticence around you not fulfilling the requirements of a role? Is it that there aren't genuinely enough people qualified for the demand that we've got? I think there's maybe some of that, or are we just poor at recruiting? I don't know what it is, but I think as we've all kind of said on this call thus far, I think the major challenge is we're expected to go into an organization and work in a specific area of security and almost work vertically in that very specific area. And I think the more I think about this, in fact, is, security is ultimately about 4 things really: confidentiality, integrity, or death might be one now with kind of IoT systems, but CIA, brand reputation, and loss of life, right? This is why I think people have such a challenge with risk, because we start to talk about sort of threat events and vulnerabilities interchangeably, and we don't really understand what risk is. I don't think, but we're there ultimately to give advice, right? We're there to reduce risk in an organization to a palatable level. And if we're going to do that, I think as a community, as a security kind of quorum almost, we need to have appreciation of what those different areas in our functions are doing. I think it'd be a great idea to just have people do job swaps. If it's a week, if it's shadowing someone in a different area of security, because I know what other people feel, but I don't know many organizations who do that.
Yeah, I've seen that because I have had that experience in the past, and that's how I've cross-skilled myself. So, you need to give your staff the opportunity to shadow people and cross-train, so that way you can find what you really like and enjoy, and also for potentially move into. And also it's a function where, when you have cross-skilled people, you can use them when there's a problem or, disaster. Yeah. Happens. And the job thing, I think there is also a problem where recruiters are the job specs are done wrong. So you're looking for the right skill set with the wrong and the wrong people. Sort of like if you look at some of the entry-level cybersecurity roles, they are expecting like years of experience. There's CISP and all these other things. Sometimes you think, is it really an entry-level job? Yeah. Or, the way that people have written these job descriptions are not good enough, I think, in my opinion, some of them at least, where you see that they are creating different roles, but what they're expecting is a different person who doesn't really match those skills. So, you if you're looking for that kind of unicorn, where are you going to find that?
I agree with you. I think there's also a why, isn't there? Like I have been guilty in the past in security organization. Well, in my organization as someone who's running the security function, to sit down with an HR team and say, right, well, I'll have CISP as kind of like a kind of an entry level requirement. And I don't mean for junior members of staff, but I mean maybe for, designer, architect, engineer. I say, right, CISP. Now, that's not necessarily that I need the specific attributes of someone who has it, in the sense of I can't remember how many domains ISC squared have now. I'm going to guess 8, whatever. However many there are in CISP.
Is it 20 or they change it to 8? I don't know.
I don't listen to what I'm saying. I haven't done it I think I did my CISP like 10, 12 years ago. So, but my point is, it's not that I necessarily need the CISP tool set in an organization. I think a lot of CISOs or a lot of HR teams use it as just like a baseline, right? They use it as a starter, pretend to say, okay, if they've spent the time to kind of diligently understand the ISC squared domains, and, it's incredibly hard to brain dump a CISP. This is somebody with at least a commitment to cybersecurity. That's the way I look at a CISP. It's someone who's invested the time.
And it's a leadership qualification. So you don't have that you can't get that until you worked in the industry for a few years. So if you're expecting that kind of qualifications from a young person or grad, you're looking for the wrong person.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, you should give them the opportunity to be trained. Just because they come out of a cybersecurity degree doesn't mean they know everything. I've interviewed so many grads where they don't even know what goes in a pen test report. So what do they actually learn in the university? They're saying, okay, they have a BSc in cybersecurity, but doesn't even know the basics of what a real life job does. So if you don't give them the opportunity to come on board and learn on the job, then you can't grow people, you can't develop their skills.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
I think there's...
Sorry, I was still talking on mute.
I assumed I was about to chime in. Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
Isn't it the wonderful world of conference call? I think I've seen a couple of videos where people in live were trying to reproduce a conference call where they were talking on each other or saying on mute and stuff like that. It's wonderful sometimes.
That must be the most said. I think the most said phrase, the most repeated phrase on any kind of Zoom call is, "Are you on mute?" Like more than anything else.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me? And are you on mute? Yeah. Are you still there? They're the 3.
All right. So I think, Rebecca, do you have an opinion on it? Rebecca? I think you're on mute. All right.
I think I don't know how to say. Sorry, is it Imani? Sorry, I'm so bad. I'm not even going to attempt how to pronounce his name. He's said that I keep on getting a feeling security is a different world of its own. I would like to know why you feel that. You're on mute, by the way, if you're talking.
Okay.
Because that's an interesting point, and I've heard that from other people as well.
Yeah, I think coming inside security from a different world, it might be overwhelming, or at least I feel sometimes it's overwhelming because you had to look at so many domains. And if you're on application security and maybe you start talking about application security, you go in there
And you see people with massive expertise because maybe they have a dev background, and you consider yourself, and you don't feel up to scratch, or you don't feel you're adding anything. So I think the advice from my perspective, and I might be wrong here, and please give me your 5 cents perspective, but go back to the principle. Ultimately, security is just a bunch of principles that you can apply to anything.
I think it's about understanding the basics. That's one of the reasons why I developed the CISO platform. The bootcamp, it is about giving them that bridging knowledge where you learn enough about each knowledge, so then you can make your own decision as to which domain you want to master or specialize in. So that way, you don't feel like it's an unknown area or something that you don't know, because there's so much stuff that we don't know when it comes to security. But if you can identify the basics and take it from there, I think, you're getting somewhere rather than just not knowing anything about each domain.
No, I agree. And I think we need more and more on that. And I like CISP and I hate CISP, but I think the good that it does, it gives people that doesn't know where to start a beginning field or a beginning direction. So it says, these are the domains, this is the areas that you should look at, and then you can go and explore and become a specialist. So that's a good part of, I think, CISP that is doing. And we need to do more. So I think we need to run like cross events or, educational events where we say, this is how you start security. And that's what the whole purpose of this call was about. It's like, how do you start into security?
Yeah, I mean, my personal experience, what got me into specializing in security was the frustrations, because, you go into projects, you design the environment, and then the security comes last, tick box. Have we done pen test? Have the security been passed? Has the QA done? And then you think, actually, you should be thinking about security right from the start, and that's kind of what led me to think, okay, it's just the basics and the common sense that you need to first.
I've been hammering on that security is everybody's responsibility, and I've been told off sometimes, but I think I find a very powerful quote that gets the message through, and saying, I have a slide in each of my presentation. I put a slide where I say, these are the recent data breach, and this is why security is also your responsibility, because your data might be in there. So as a bastion host of your organization, you had to embed security because it could be your data that get exposed. So just consider that whatever the organization you're working with, your data might get exposed. And consider customer data as your data.
And that's the biggest challenge, I think, Francesco, isn't it? Is, I don't know. I think getting the people getting data ownership, I don't think, and from the CISOs and CIOs that I talk to on a daily basis, is as big a challenge today as it's ever been, right? Despite CCPA, GDPR, whichever other regulation or acronym you want to use, is, getting people to understand that the security function designs controls commensurate with a level of risk. You tell us that level of risk by defining and classifying your data and your assets, your applications, and various different, I suppose, classifications. And I still see challenges that, you go into an organization and ask them for traceability from a set of business processes through to a kind of catalog of applications, the infrastructure that supports them, and the data that resides on that infrastructure. I'm not saying all organizations, because I know some organizations that are brilliant at it, but a lot of the time that doesn't exist. And if that doesn't exist, then how can we enforce or stand by security as everyone's responsibility? It becomes challenging, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I think it does.
Yeah, it is.
It is, and this has been, I think, that it's not just on the security side. It's also when the people trying to reinvent an application, and they don't really understand what data they hold or what that application is about. So I talked with a lot of enterprise architects, and there is that confusion in that field as well. It's like, what do you want that application to do? And people say, well, I don't know. It's like whatever it does before. And then when you ask, well, what was that application doing before? And they said, well, I don't know. It's like, it's not just security that they experience for. I think it's the due diligence on IT is poor.
Yeah,
and
I'd go along with that.
And with the whole DevOps, there seems to be a license to go fast. And it's fair enough. I mean, time to market is critical. But there is also the recognition that some things like foundational project require time. Understand big data project. It's like, because you're checking your data all in one location doesn't mean that you have control over your data or you even understand what your data is. Very few organizations that have been across have seen a serious effort to build a data model, unless it's a big transformation, unless you have some data savvy people that talk to the board and say, you have to spend this amount of time to actually understand your data.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree with that completely.
So security is nothing else than doing things right, ultimately. And I don't know why in security, I don't know. I keep on telling the story of, if you build a bridge and you don't take time to build the pillar right, the bridge collapses and people die. If you build an IT system that maintain a hospital and you don't spend time to capture requirements, people die. But IT seems to get away with that for some reason and keep on getting away with it. I don't know why. That's something that kept on puzzling me since the beginning of being in this field.
Mm-hmm. Guys, sorry, I have to leave. I apologize. I got something come up. I'm sorry. It was nice talking to you. I'll speak to you again later on, properly in the next sessions.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Johnny. All right. Sorry. I'm just reading up one thing that Lamni is saying. So it's saying doing application security and also software development is complicated. When you consider it, it seems to be two deep and separate world. He's from the front web. How one managed to be in between, and I think that's absolutely correct. We tend to keep on preaching now with DevSecOps the fact that we need to upskill the engineer into security engineer, but we don't give them the tool. Mm-hmm. So I think from a tooling perspective, from an architect perspective, the tool are principle, requirement, guidance, blueprints, best practice to enable people to go at speed. And it's just saying, well, secure your web development, and then you have the web developer say, okay, how? It's like, take our step 10, take blueprints, take, for example, on a very clear example that I came across on Apache Tomcat. It's like, well, here's the blueprint on how to harden up the Tomcat, and it's command by command, and it's nothing security-wise, it's nothing hardcore, it's just one sequence of commands after the other. And they were happy to do it, and that became the reference standard, and really doing the basic, really the simple thing. Chris, what do you think about it?
I don't even think it is the how. Obviously, it's the how on many occasions, but it's the why. Like the biggest challenge that I've seen, right? And again, this is me harking back to end user world. But the challenge that I would see, and this is kind of typical in a waterfall-based project engagement with pen testing at a particular stage. What I would see happen is pen test report gets produced. It doesn't matter what it says, but let's say it says there are cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in your web app in these particular form fields. You need to consider sanitizing input and encoding output. You need to do it on all these different areas. I mean, you go and tell a developer who's now moved on to another project that he now or she needs to go back and kind of, I suppose, retrofit whatever it is, escaping or whatever they're doing within a particular app. And that doesn't get prioritized, right? It just doesn't, generally speaking, in organization. And I do think that has a lot to do with the why that's important. I think, maybe I'm wrong. I think most developers these days understand maybe the how. Is that fair? Maybe I'm not fair in that, using particular APIs that are secure, or understanding some of the good practice recommendations. But I sometimes think we sit in this, I don't want to call it an ivory tower, but we sit as a security function. We do, don't we? We sit and we say, thou must go and change this because we work in security.
And then
we don't.
How?
Yeah. We don't say how. We don't say why it's important. And getting back to getting people to take ownership and responsibility for cybersecurity. Of course, we have to win hearts and minds. And that's that. Everyone's busy. That's what we forget, right? People don't do shitty security practice because they want to, but because they're rushed into. They're rushed into doing it. They've got very strict deadlines on something. I don't know. They've got to work with, I don't know, legacy or deprecated libraries. They're doing whatever it is. I think that is one of our biggest failings in cybersecurity. I think is that we assume everyone has.
I think in IT,
maybe so. Yeah, I think you're right.
Security needs some time, and doing things at speed and giving best practice, even giving the best practice in guidance doesn't mean that people can actually. It requires time to think. Yeah. I mean, the more requirement you add, the more complexity you add, even if you want to build simplicity.
I assume you'll be coming back imminently.
Did you lost me again?
That was right on cue, though, mate. That was really good.
It was. I'll say it's a programmatic pause. I'm trying to make drama.
That's it. Yeah, dramatizing it. Maybe you're right. It's systemic, right? It's an issue of IT. It's security, but people want things immediately. I think is a major challenge. And I'm not saying people look for shortcuts, but if we don't have, and this is another, I think, top-down challenge in organizations. If we don't have security and assurance and integrity and quality of applications on everyone's balance scorecard, on everyone's job requirements, people's bonuses depending on this, people don't care, right? Yeah. They don't. It's no good us caring if we're not incentivizing and motivating other people to give.
But also, as you said, also incentivizing, motivating, making it rewarding. So if a specific team is actually embedding security, give them a prize, give them a recognition, give them a crown or a badge or whatever. It's like, it's both ends. Security doesn't need to be the guy with a big bad stick that goes around and bash people in the head. It's also a recognition of actually who do things right. And as you said, make it worth their pain by actually linking the security vulnerabilities of a specific application to the bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an idea. I'm not sure that's going to work in every multinational organization, but I think certainly the principles should be applied. And that's how you get security to be everyone's responsibility. I get a little bit sick and tired of hearing it without organizations having kind of traceability of how that's going to be applicable to them. Yeah. Or maybe how they're going to implement it. Saying it at a board level and saying, yes, in our company, security is everyone's responsibility. You're like, okay, cool. What does that actually mean? How do you go about enforcing that?
Yeah. And making it worthwhile. I'm not going to quote the company or where I've seen it to make it generic enough, but it works. Publish the data, making it linked to people bonus. If you achieve this amount of release or this amount of fixes at this quarter, you get your bonus. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
Period. And at that point, people will try to do whatever they can to actually do their fixes. And they're going to come and ask you for how I'm going to do it. It's like, but at that point in time, it's their problem. It's not their responsibility. I have to say it's hurtful, but it's their problem as well.
Yeah.
They feel it close to their chest, close to their heart. It's not anymore a push, but a pull from team to security. Then at the other point, linking to your point, is how the security team needs to be geared up to actually reply to those questions. Otherwise, all of a sudden it becomes a bottleneck.
Yeah, and that is something that I think is going to continue to be an issue, right? If you've got, I always use sort of Facebook and Amazon as my examples here, but if you've got organizations who are releasing daily like 70,000 commits, or so, I've literally made that figure up. I can't remember how many it is, but you've got continuous integration going on in these organizations. How possibly do you have enough? And I'm not going to get into a machine learning or automation conversation today. We can do that at another session. But how do you provide consultancy to these organizations or to these particular business functions when we're very used in security to having like a 2-week lead time, right? Someone does a pen test, that takes a week, maybe 2 days to a week. It's then a week to document findings. You then present the findings. People then argue about what's getting fixed and what isn't. Then about 3 months later, something gets fixed and then the project goes live. That literally doesn't happen anymore, right? When you can just throw code at AWS, it's at Lambda, for example.
Yeah, Lambda function.
Just having like literally zero infrastructure. You can send that stuff live in like 2 minutes. So I think in some organizations we're doing a good job of becoming cross-functional, and there's almost no security function now. There's just a security person who works on a project. But in the majority of organizations that maybe I speak to about this subject, that's still something that they're doing as innovation. The core business is still run on these antiquated ways of doing things, I think. But
I think at that, quoting my point and quoting the pain I'm going through, there will always be two speeds. So the target operating model is where everything is integrated and everybody has the time to actually do security, but is a revolution, and is an evolution matrix where team ramp up to that vision, but you still need governance. So
for sure,
for example, how do you go for a company from starting from day zero in aiming that they have a SecDevOps practice, and that everybody get pace at speed and do things securely? So you start choking project inside governance, and that's fine at the beginning if you have a vision to aim for that target. You start producing patterns, start producing best practice guidance, you start getting security architect ingrained with other architect and with the various project. And it's fine to go slow at the beginning and to choke project. Just choose the battle that you want to win and the other one that you want to ignore. Have you come across some organization that does that good?
I've dealt with a large number of organizations, a fair number of organizations who are implementing roles like the business security officer and kind of the security champion within DevOps teams, and just rethinking this the model and how we work within companies, because we are a business function. I hate it. Hate's maybe a strong word. I dislike it when we talk about embedding security. Well, yeah, embedding security in business strategy. I'm like, why are we doing it? Like we're intrinsic, we're integral to business strategy. That's the mind shift that I think we need to do, is rather than thinking we're on the periphery and we need to sort of push and shove our way into what the business is doing. You look at, I suppose, detrimental effects or business disruption in a lot of large organizations, and they're caused by digital means. They're caused by cyber attacks. Like, not always. Sometimes it's, I don't know, users doing something they shouldn't. But broadly speaking, it's technology. Technology is this, absolute blessing for a lot of organizations going through this digital transformation. But they're going through that, and technology's, like I said, intrinsic or integral to their business. But as soon as that happens, then cybersecurity also has to be as
prepared and geared up.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe it's not, I don't think.
No, I don't think. I think organizations are getting there, and there is a balance. We're getting there. I think we're getting there. DevSecOps, I think, is a new word. Architecture as a practice is still learning how to interact with DevOps and DevSecOps. I think we are getting our transformation. I think from what I'm seeing, the world is getting used to the word cloud, and is gearing up for the word DevOps or DevSecOps. So it's going to take some time to actually find a new balance. And by the time I guess we find a new balance, it's going to change. The world is going to change again for security.
We'll have just got used to it, and then things will pivot. We should run a session on cloud. I mean, again, that was the subject of my MSc dissertation. Actually, was demystifying some of the risks of public cloud computing, and I think some of those principles aren't just cloud orientated. They would apply for insert contemporary technology here, so blockchain, machine learning, whatever, Cool.
Yeah. I have to close because they're kicking me out of the conference.
Likewise, I have to jump on something else as well. I've really enjoyed this, guys.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, consider leaving us a review or sponsoring us on Patreon. It helps us bring on amazing guests and keep the podcast alive and free. Consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP and watch other episodes at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.